I need help. My body is changing. No, I'm not talking about that wonderful time when a girl becomes a woman. I'm talking about something else entirely. I'm talking about metamorphosis. I'm talking about transformation. I'm talking about becoming a monster. I'm a woman who was living in a shady area of an East Coast city, though for my own safety, I can't tell you where. I'm 22, and I was struggling to pay off the student loans I took out for college, only to drop out halfway into my third semester, leaving me with nothing but a hefty debt that wasn't easing. I tried the usual shit: convenience store clerk, barista, janitor, waitress, even working at a fast food restaurant in the middle of the night, only to come home at 5 every morning smelling of week-old fry grease, with chump change in my pocket and an eternally empty stomach. I admit, I wanted nothing more than to get out of that shitty-ass town filled with shitty-ass people and move someplace where a lady like myself had a chance to flourish, degree or no. Honestly, I wanted to be beautiful. I wanted to model, maybe even act. I wanted so badly for people to rush up to me, taking pictures and asking for autographs and telling me how I inspired them, how they wanted to be just like me one day. I wanted to have people look at me like I walked on water. I guess that was selfish. I guess it shows how my ego was, how little I cared about anything but my own vanity. It started the day I met her. She was tall, elegant looking, a woman with midnight-colored hair that, when it caught the light just right, glowed with a deep blue hue. Her eyes were a chocolate brown color, and her skin was a flawless alabaster, which was in stark contrast to the raspberry tone of her heart-shaped lips. Her eyebrows were fierce, perfectly shaped, and her thick, dark lashes brushed her high cheekbones when she blinked or looked down. Her clothing was draped over her lithe dancer's body, her long legs sending the shimmering cascade of a golden dress flowing around her like some ethereal goddess with every confident stride. She had both the most willowy and most womanly figure one could ever wish for, and she moved like she came from a Parisian one-way, or maybe the Russian ballet. She was so graceful, I'd imagine even the most disciplined of dancers would cry seeing her glide across the streets as I did on that fateful day. She looked so out of place walking in her 6-inch stilettos down my grungy street. I had just collapsed on the front of my concrete stairs in my less than clean apartment building after what was another long night shift, shoving grease-covered burger bags into the clammy hands of people reeking of alcohol and weed. My hair was greasy, and it clung to my forehead, and it was a dingy rust color. My face wasn't clear, my skin had blemishes, and I couldn't really afford makeup to even try to hide them. I had dark purple half circles under my eyes from months of far too little sleep. My mother, if she were alive, would have affectionately described me that day as death warmed over. She wouldn't have been wrong. I felt like it. I could never have guessed that this goddess would pause in front of filthy little me, holding out a slender hand with fingers that ended in perfectly manicured nails, and placing one under my chin. I froze. I mean, what was I gonna do? This random woman who honestly looked like she'd come down from Mount Olympus or something just lifted my face up so that my tired eyes met hers. Her eyes studied my face for just a moment, and I held my breath, trying to decide if I should bolt or if I needed to fight back if she tried anything funny. Not that she looked the type. Her lips pulled back into what I can only describe as a smug smile before she opened them to speak. "You have so much potential," she purred. I shook my head, pulling back in amazement as she straightened. "I'm sorry. What? I couldn't help but be completely confused by this. Potential, my dear. You have it. She pulled out a business card from the golden clutch she held in her free hand and placed it in mine. Delilah Gregory, Talent Scout. That's what the card said, along with a phone number. Delilah Gregory? I looked up at this woman. What kind of talent is she looking for? The woman rolled her eyes. I am looking for the most beautiful girls I can find, wherever I can find them. I felt stupid to not realize that this woman was Delilah. Oh, I'm sorry. She pulled her hand up, cutting me off. No need for apologies, she said abruptly. I stood up, shoving the card into my back pocket of my ratty jeans. If you're looking for beauty, you might want to check over at your area. There's not much you're going to find here besides some homeless folks, druggies. I trailed off, not wanting her to assume I was one of those people. Oh no, I think I've found exactly what I'm looking for right here, she said confidently, eyeing me in a way I've eyed chocolate cake. I think I've found a diamond in the rough. Tell me, lovely, what is it you're doing here? She asked me. I stammered a moment, explaining rather awkwardly that I lived here and I was just resting up on the steps because I'd just come back from my house from a shift at... Oh, no, darling. I know why you're here. What I want to know is why you aren't living in a penthouse with men and women groveling at your feet. Now, that confused me. Why I'm not living... Where? I was dumbstruck by her words. You've got something special about you, darling, and I'd love to help you bring that potential out. So, if you're interested, call me, and I can help you turn those rags into glittering riches in no time. She turned away, flagging a car I hadn't seen coming down the road. It was a Bentley, and I felt my jaw drop as a man in a chauffeur's suit got out and opened the back door for this Delilah woman to slide inside in a movement so fluid it seemed unnatural. I watched as the man got back in the front seat and drove out of sight, and as the sun started to peek out from the edges of the other rundown buildings around me, I climbed up the trash-covered stairs, fished out my key from my uniform apron, the card in my back pocket burning a hole in my jeans as I rushed into my apartment. I tossed my apron off the second I got through the door, whipping out the card and staring at the contact information on it. Delilah Gregory, huh? I thought to myself, what the hell could she have seen in me? I shook my head, thinking it was some kind of cruel joke, but a tiny part of me, a hopeful, stupid, and optimistic part of me, told me it wasn't. I put the card down on the cardboard box I used as a tiny coffee table in front of the couch I'd picked up off the street one day. It was set out as trash, and it was in all right condition at the time, so I figured I'd bring it home. I wandered into my bathroom, turning the naked bulb that hung over the dusty mirror on above my cracked sink. I stared into my reflection, trying to find whatever it was that Delilah saw. At first, I wasn't finding much. Too many too big pimples and blemishes, untamed eyebrows, a malnourished skin tone, but then something else. Eyes the color of the daytime sky, framed by long, if only light-colored lashes, and powder pink lips with a defined cupid's bow and a nice pout, even as tired as I was. Maybe there really was something there? I had to be sure. I stripped down right then, turning my shower on, and despite the weak pressure of my plumbing, I was grateful that it was hot at least, and I scrubbed my hair vigorously, then my face, and then the rest of me. When I was satisfied that I successfully washed away all the evidence of my nighttime hell that was my job, I stepped out and wrapped myself in a towel. I wiped the steam from the mirror with my hand and, looking in at the face, reflected back. The pieces of my hair that had fallen out of the towel and had already started to dry were a warm honey color that had been hidden by a thick layer of sweat and fry grease. The skin, where it wasn't pimply and red, was actually soft, with the tiniest hint of pink, flushed from the heat of my shower. Maybe, just maybe, I did have potential, as Delilah said. Maybe I'd get dressed, walk down to the payphones at the bottom floor of the building, and give her a call. I'd like to say I didn't, but that's exactly what I did. I dried myself off, put on my least tattered clothes, and grabbed a handful of coins from the jeans I'd taken off the floor before my shower. Grabbing the business card and my key, I exited my dark little apartment. With shaking hands, I dialed the number on a worn-down keypad of the only working payphone in the whole building. And I held the receiver up to my ear. She picked up almost immediately. "I knew you'd call." Her voice sounded like she was wearing that same smug smile that she had when she inspected me. I was wondering what you meant about potential," I said, my voice small, even in my ear. "Why tell you when I can show you?" she asked. "Wait outside. I'll be there very soon." She hung up before I could even respond. She knew I wouldn't refuse. Not even as the words of protest were being held on my lips, I had to admit. I wanted to see. I wanted to understand. She arrived soon after, as she promised, and the door to the back of the Bentley swung open. She leaned towards me, telling me to get in, and I did as I was told, climbing inside. We drove to her presidential suite in one of the fanciest hotels in the city. It wasn't long before she had me sitting at the marble counter in her bathroom, a briefcase filled with various cosmetics and creams, sitting neatly on the bright lights that surrounded the mirrors before me. She pulled out a vial of peach-colored cream from the collection, pouring some onto her hand and applying it to my face. It felt light and creamy, and I could almost feel it absorbing into my skin. She applied a few more products, mostly vials of lotions and creams that felt very tingly and good on my face, before turning my attention to the reflection in the mirror. My face looked different. I know it's unbelievable, but my face, it was clear, completely blemish-free. It wasn't that it looked like makeup had covered it, but that there was nothing there at the surface of the skin. I wasn't sure how it was possible, but my face was flawless. I stared up at her, and my eyes had to have been the size of saucers as I gaped, open-mouthed, at this woman. "What did you put on me?" I gawked, touching my face and feeling the soft, smooth flesh beneath my fingertips. Delilah smiled. A flash of pearl-white, perfect teeth beamed at me, and she walked behind me, looking into the mirror at the two of us. "I just helped to bring out some of that potential, and it doesn't end there." She brushed my hair gently, like a mother would do to her dearly loved child. "I can help you look like a goddess." That was it. I was hooked. It didn't take long before I was glowing right alongside Delilah. My hair, which she had given me special oil to nourish, was now a deep honey-colored gold that would flow perfect and shiny as it fell down my shoulders in beach-ready waves. My eyes were bright and framed with the same dark, thick lashes as Delilah. I was spectacular. Every inch of me, with the help of Delilah and her magic creams, was flawless. No makeup was needed to make me the most stunning creature to grace the room, and finally, for the first time in my life, people's jaws dropped when I entered a room. I walked on water, just as I dreamed I would, and life felt perfect. I moved in with Delilah, living in penthouses and presidential suites in every big city I could ever have dreamed of seeing. Paris, London, Dubai, New York, Tokyo, Madrid, you name it, I was there, shining like the brightest star as men, women, and children all stared in awe the moment I walked by. I'm sure they had the same expression I had when I saw Delilah walk towards me those few months ago. Everything had been so perfect. Delilah said she wanted to talk to me, and so earlier today, that's exactly what happened. I had never expected to hear what I heard, never expected to see what I saw or feel what I am feeling now. Delilah told me just an hour ago that I was ready. She pulled me away from the crowds, up to the suite where we were staying, and turned to me for the first time with what looked like tired eyes. She put her hand on my cheek and cradled my face in it. "You have become so absolutely beautiful," she crooned. "You're perfect now. It's time for you to do what we have been getting you ready for since the day we met." She reached into her clutch, which she always kept with her, and pulled out one of the vials. I felt excitement buzz across my skin, seeing the tiny bottle in her hand. "Turn around," she commanded, and so I did. I was used to this sort of thing. She would put her creams on my skin, and I'd feel a sort of ecstasy like nothing else. But this time it was different somehow. She ran her finger from the base of my neck down my spine, and I, waiting impatiently for that feeling to come. It didn't, though. Instead, it felt almost as if my skin was splitting. It burned like a cat scratch, and my back arched away from her touch for the first time ever, turning with what was assuredly a look of confusion and fear. She smiled at me, those same warm chocolate eyes that had once filled me with curiosity, even confidence, were now filled with something more, something else, a sinister anticipation. As another smile spread across those raspberry lips, which were now, as I studied her, framed with the slightest signs of aging. It was only a moment before my legs dropped out from under me and I hit the ground, paralyzed. Delilah stood over me, staring down at me as she reached behind her head with both hands. She ran her hands down her shoulders, and her skin seemed to almost slide off her as she did it. It was some sick scene from a horror movie where the bad guy takes off the mask and it just sags on the floor like his face is being melted. Underneath that skin was something terrifying. Those same chocolate eyes now sat in a face covered in sinew and meat, though areas of it were dotted with patches of gray, mummified-looking skin. Her lips were gone, revealing a mouth that filled with white teeth that beamed at me, sitting in black gums and only very slightly obscuring the view of the teeth that hid behind them. Fangs, like 100 taxidermy needles, rested like shark's teeth in rows behind the human-looking ones. As her skin fell off her like a robe, I could see the way her muscles wrapped around her bones, sticking out like spikes where the joints should have been. As the guys fell away, she spoke, and her voice layered like 100 different women, all their voices speaking in unison. "You are so beautiful now." She placed those bone-colored hands on the back of my skin, and I felt it open like a suit. As her fingers clenched around my spine, she pulled me out of my skin, and I didn't have to look in any reflective surface to know. I looked as she did. A sick, ghoul-like thing, a corpse that had crawled out of the depths of hell. She tossed me onto the ground a dozen feet away, flung me like I was nothing more than a rag doll. instead of a 125-pound woman. Watching her lift my skin like it was a new dress, holding it like it was the most beautiful garment in the world, it sickened me. She stepped into my body, her new body, like something out of a horror movie, and as soon as she slid that face over hers, the flesh parted on her back, sealed. I was staring at me, only it wasn't. Almost every detail was right. The way my shoulders sloped elegantly downward, the way my waist tucked in before opening to my wide, rounded hips, the gap between my thighs, and the way my body held its weight, ever so slightly leaning to the left foot. The smile that was sitting on my face was exactly mine. The only thing that wasn't mine were the eyes. Instead of the blue of mine, I saw again that chocolate color, and as I laughed, it was my voice coming from those lips. My lips. I found the strength to lift my head, and I felt the muscles tighten. There was no way living being should be so acutely aware of this. And as I opened my mouth, it felt wrong as the sinew stretched around my jaw, and a raspy, haggard voice rattled from someplace deep in my chest. Delilah! The voice croaked. A single voice. The thing that was wearing my body smiled brightly, and it twirled around, admiring itself. It was all I could do to lift my arms and drag myself forward, inch by inch. I reached for that thing's legs, but it sidestepped me easily, giggling my laugh as it danced out the door. My body wasn't mine. It was hers. Hers. That word rang in my head like a bell. Hers, hers, hers. I crawled my way to the discarded skin. That thing, Delilah, had left on the ground. I struggled to lift myself to my feet. Every moment felt wrong. Every movement, each muscle, moved in a way that felt like it was made of some kind of wet jelly. And the squishing sound it made my stomach churn, or at least what felt like a stomach. I did as she had done, sliding into the flesh she'd left behind, and it felt right. It felt like I was putting on the most wonderfully fitting pair of jeans, and as the flesh encased my legs, becoming mine. As soon as the skin touched my body, it adhered like it was painted on, so perfectly fitting what was underneath, while not revealing the disgusting creature it hid just behind a thin layer of alabaster flesh. As the flesh pulled over my face, I could feel it fit onto me. I could feel it become me. The sound of the skin knitting together as my back closed up sent a shiver down my spine. I looked into the mirror to see what was once Delilah, now with a pair of blue eyes I'd never forget. They were the eyes I'd seen every time I looked in the mirror. This was my body now. The signs of aging I'd seen on Delilah's skin were still there, and this flesh, I could feel, was not going to last forever. On the table by the door sat a single vial of the liquid Delilah had used to rend me of my skin. I picked it up, clutching it in elegant figures that would soon become shriveled like an old crone's. This face I wear will grow wrinkled soon enough. I can't have that. I want to be beautiful forever. My body is changing. I need a new one. And these blue eyes would look especially beautiful in your face. I think you might have potential. I'll see you soon.